Starting high school is daunting for a lot of teenagers, and what most of them want more than anything is to fit in and for their peers to accept them. So when an invitation to party with slightly older and more popular students come up, for most it would be a no-brainer. This was certainly the case for two girls back in 2012 who were looking forward to cutting loose with some boys they knew from school. There was absolutely no way that they could have foreseen the abuse they would be subjected to that night and for years to come. Trigger warning, we will be discussing rape, sexual assault and self-harm today as I and Mark from Survivors Network uncover Daisy Coleman's story. Hello and welcome to the 32nd episode of Uncover True Crime Podcast. My name is Stephanie and each week we uncover a different unsolved true crime case ranging from missing persons, unsolved murders, Jane and John Does and suspicious deaths. You can listen to the podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, and other podcast streaming apps, as well as on YouTube by searching Uncover True Crime. You can follow the podcast on Twitter at uncover_pod, on Instagram at Uncover True Crime Pod, and you can join the Uncover True Crime discussion group on Facebook. As you heard in the introduction, we have a guest on today's podcast, so welcome, Mark.
Hello there, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Yes, not too bad at all.
Mark hosts a show called Survivors Network over on Get Vocal. So Mark, do you want to describe what your show is?
Yeah, sure. Well, basically, I'm pretty new to Get Vocal myself. I've only been on there a couple of months, but I've met some amazing people and I've had some pretty amazing people come on. I just like hearing about, like yourself, that's why we got into contact in the first place, is unsolved cases. There's hundreds of thousands of them in America, and I think it's just been released today by that Mark William Thomas. There's almost 200,000 over here.
Wow.
Unsolved cases. Yeah, so I want to get victims, survivors, advocates onto my channel and just get heard. Just go through the case from start to finish, and then they can then share it from the Get Vocal onto their social media channels. It's just all about helping people get heard, really. And so there's so many cold cases and so many offenders out there. It's just a question of people just want to be heard, really.
One thing I really like about the style of your show is that it's really interactive. So I was on the show, it must be a few weeks ago now, wasn't it? And we discussed the Claudia Lawrence case, which I covered on my show.
I really enjoyed that episode. That's one of them. As I told you, that case, man, I've been following that case since day one, and it still baffles me now, even though we've done a show on it.
I know it. There's so much to it, but I really like that people can interact if they want to come on to Get Vocal and put their face out there and discuss the case with us, or if they want to just chat.
Yep.
I really, really like that style of show, and it's not a style that I've seen before, and I'd never even heard of Get Vocal as a platform before you had messaged me on Twitter, actually.
I'm trying to get more UK people on it, because I would love to get some kind of UK true crime, almost like a community on there once a week or once a month, and just discuss all the cases you've gone over on all your podcasts. But there are a few more UK podcasters getting on it now. So hopefully it'd be nice, just maybe one Sunday evening or something, just if we all got together and just discussed all your cases and particular cases that might need help and might need publicity, or just see if we can get stuck into a few cases, really, and get a few theories going.
That would be great. So in around a week's time, I'm going to be over on the Survivors Network doing another episode. Do you want to briefly describe, Mark, what we'll be discussing?
We are going to discuss the Manchester pusher now, and the fact that it was a hugely prolific serial rapist in the vicinity as well. Now, the reason I described him as that is because he's very slight. He's only about 5'6", 5'7", so I don't think he would be able to. I think pushing people in the canal would probably be his kind of a thing. He wasn't strong enough to rape people manually, so he would drug them. So I'm thinking pushing drunk people into a canal would be right up his street. Would that be in his MO as well? I think it's worth investigating. I'm not saying that all the victims of the pusher are the work of a serial killer. I'm not saying that at all. But there is so many There is so many cases of people just randomly falling in canal. I think one victim was on the phone to his mum at the time. I think there's so many cases that I would be surprised if at least 10 or so weren't connected.
I'll be honest, I don't know a lot about the case, but I really look forward to discussing it with you. I'll have all of Mark's channels and social media in the description of this episode, so go check it out, and I will obviously post on my Twitter and all my social media the exact date and time that I'm going to be on Get Vocal with Mark. Before we get started on today's case, I want to let you all know that there is an amazing documentary on this case over on Netflix called Audrey and Daisy, which I would highly recommend. I did heavily rely on that documentary in order to gather information for this episode, as it contained interviews with most of the key people in the case. I did do my own research beyond the documentary, and this episode will not be a review as such on the documentary. I just wanted to be totally transparent as to where I'm getting a lot of my information from. But without any further ado, let's uncover Daisy Coleman's story. Daisy Coleman was born on the 30th of June 1997 in Albany, Missouri, to Melinda and Michael Coleman. She had 3 brothers, Tristan, Charlie and Logan, and they were like any other family. Melinda was a vet who supported her family when Michael went to school to become a doctor. He would eventually graduate and specialise in family medicine. Melinda and Michael loved attending wrestling events where their children would participate, and it was on their way home from one such event on the 17th of February 2007 that tragedy struck. Michael drove over black ice and lost control of the car. It overturned and caught fire with the family inside. Melinda tried desperately to pull her husband out of the car, but she lost consciousness due to her injuries, and although paramedics and doctors did their best to save him, sadly, Mark didn't survive. After Michael's death, Melinda and her kids agreed that Albany just didn't feel like home anymore, and they moved 1 hour's drive away to Maryville, a small town with just over 11,000 residents. The town was a perfect fit to start with. Melinda got a new job, her kids settled well into school, and they were doing their best to grieve and move on as a family. Daisy joined the cheerleading team and was a popular girl who had the world at her feet. She stayed in close contact with her best friend Paige Pinkhurst even after moving from Albany, and the two would meet up as often as they could. On the 7th of January 2012, 14-year-old Daisy and 13-year-old Paige organised a sleepover at Daisy's house, and together they decided they wanted to experiment with drinking. They smuggled alcohol into Daisy's room and started texting a few boys that Daisy knew from school. The boys asked them over to the basement where they were drinking, and the girls gladly accepted. The boys picked them up at 1 a.m, but by 2 a.m, the girls' lives had changed forever. Robin Burland, Paige's mother, described in the Audrey and Daisy documentary how, quote, 2 bubbly teenagers snuck out that night and really they never came back. The Paige and Daisy that left that night and the Paige and Daisy that were found the next morning were not the same girls, unquote. At some point that evening, Daisy and 17-year-old Matt Barnett started texting. Matthew told Daisy that he was drinking with some of his friends, Nick Graumatis, Cole Forney, Jordan Zeke, and another unidentified boy. I know that Nick, Cole and Jordan were all 17 years old at the time, and I'm unsure how old the other boy was, but I believe the reason he has not been named is because he is slightly younger than the other 3 boys, possibly either 15 or 16, but I might be totally wrong on this detail. Around 1 a.m, Matthew drove to Daisy's, picked up the girls and took them to his house where he snuck them in through a basement window. Daisy and Paige were separated almost immediately, with the unidentified boy taking Paige into a separate room. The boy started kissing Paige and made it clear he wanted to have sex with her. Paige, who was very drunk by this point, said no, but the boy didn't listen and he sexually assaulted her. Meanwhile, Jordan, Matthew and Cole started taunting Daisy to drink from the, quote, bitch cup, unquote. Daisy was heavily intoxicated and very quickly fell unconscious. The girls were there for around an hour before the boys started panicking about how they were going to get the girls home, as they didn't want anyone knowing that Daisy or Paige had been there that night, particularly Daisy's brother Charlie, because Jordan, Cole and Nick were supposed to be 3 of his best friends. They dragged Daisy, who was unable to walk or talk, from the basement to Matthew's car, and after they dropped Paige off at her house, they drove to Daisy's and got her out of the car, only to leave her lying in the snow in -5-degree weather. When her family discovered her 5 hours later, they were horrified to see that she had frostbite and her hair was frozen to the ground. They rushed her inside and Melinda ran her a lukewarm bath, hoping to slowly increase her temperature. It was as she was taking off Daisy's clothes that she saw bruises and red marks on her inner thighs, so she decided to take Daisy to the hospital. When the doctors examined her, they found that her blood alcohol level was 0.14, which is legally intoxicated, but bear in mind this was 8 hours after she stopped drinking. Doctors believed that when she was dropped off at her home, she would have been near comatose with the amount of alcohol in her system. Due to the injuries to Daisy's inner thigh, doctors performed a rape kit and confirmed to Daisy and Melinda that she had been raped during the time that she had been passed out in the basement. Daisy filed a formal complaint with police and admits that her initial story was hazy, but given everything she'd been through in the past 12 hours, I don't think this is surprising at all. It's very common for survivors of sexual assault not to remember everything straight away or to struggle opening up about their attack, so this really isn't unusual. During the Audrey and Daisy documentary, Sheriff Darren White made a big deal about how proactive his department is on crime and how quickly Jordan, Cole, Nick, Matthew and the unidentified boy were taken into custody. Matthew admitted to having sexual intercourse with Daisy but claimed it was consensual. I would like to note here that 14 is the age of consent in Missouri, and that is how old Daisy was at the time of her attack. Sheriff White initially said this about Daisy's attack, quote, "I was actually pretty happy with it because we had what I consider to be a very serious crime, and within a matter of hours, we had warrants for their arrest, and they'd been arrested. That's a pretty good day. Did a crime occur? Hell yes, it occurred. Was it a horrible crime? Yes, it was a horrible crime. And did those boys need to be punished for it? Absolutely." Unquote. Matthew Burnett was charged with sexual assault and endangering the welfare of a minor, as was the unidentified male who was at the party, but he, unlike Matthew, admitted to raping Paige and pled guilty. I was unable to find out how long his sentence was, but I know he definitely got a custodial sentence. Although most of this episode is centred around what happened to Daisy for reasons that will become clear very quickly, I want to take a minute to acknowledge the fact that Paige was raped that night, and I hope that seeing her rapist pay for what he did to her gave her some kind of closure. Her mother Robin has said that Paige carries around a lot of guilt over what happened to Daisy that night, and while guilt is a very common emotion for survivors to feel, the only people who are at fault here are Jordan, Nick, Cole, Matthew, and the unidentified male. It is never a victim's fault. No one asks to be raped, and no one deserves to be raped. Back to Daisy's case. A short time after Matthew was charged, a video of Daisy's rape started circulating around her high school. It was allegedly filmed by Jordan on Nick's phone, although Jordan said that he just thought they were dry humping. The video was supposedly dark and blurry to start with, but it does get more graphic, and it's apparently clear that Daisy is not moving while Matthew is on top of her. The phone was confiscated while the boys were in custody, but the video had been deleted, and due to the technology on iPhones, it could not be recovered. The only reason I'm using the word allegedly in regards to the video is that police never actually saw it, and Darren White claims it never existed, and even said that anyone who claims to have seen it is a liar, even though Jordan and Matthew admitted that although the video did exist at one time, they had since deleted it. I would have thought the police would have taken this more seriously, as this video could not only be their best piece of evidence in convicting Matthew, but it is also child pornography. As it is a film showing the rape of a minor, owning, creating, distributing, or promoting it, i.e. passing it around to friends, which is what a lot of teenagers at that school did, is a Class B felony, which carries a sentence of 5 to 15 years. Showing that video to anyone under the age of 13 is a Class A felony, which carries a maximum sentence of 30 years in prison. This detail is skirted over in the Audrey and Daisy documentary, and I really want to bring awareness to this part of the case. I don't know if the police confiscated anyone else's phone who this video was apparently sent to, or if any of these people were questioned, but given the police's attitude on the whole thing, I doubt it very much. So much for Sheriff Darren White's proactive approach. Talking of his proactive approach, Sheriff Darren White had this to say on the Audrey and Daisy documentary, quote, "One of the parts that people have really blown out of proportion in this entire case is that everyone wants to throw the word rape out there. It's very popular. The Maryville rape, the Coleman rape. Nothing that night, never ever, of the elements of that crime rose to the level of rape. Whether we agree with this or not, the people of that age in the state of Missouri can have consensual sex. Forcible compulsion is a primary component of the crime of rape." Unquote. I beg to differ because under the law in Missouri, first-degree rape is defined as, quote, "sexual intercourse, bracket, penetration of a vagina by a penis, even if slight or without emission, bracket, with a person who's incapacitated, incapable of consent, or by force, including deep rape drugs," unquote. When the interviewer challenged him and reminded him that Daisy was unconscious at the time the assault took place, he said, quote, "That's a whole other element for lawyers and litigators and people like that to figure out," unquote.
Wow. I've got a question straight off the bat. Quote, bitch cup. They made the girls drink from. When did they come up with that idea? How long has that idea been going on? It was obviously drugged. Are there other victims out there that maybe don't know that they were raped?
That will come up slightly later in the episode, allegedly. There are other girls who have made accusations against these boys. I don't know what ones in particular, because they've never made a formal complaint or came out publicly. The details about these allegations aren't really known. As far as the bitch cup goes, Daisy described in the documentary how it basically had like kind of marks on the cup that kind of meant if you drink this much, you're this tough, and if you can drink this much alcohol, you're this hard, sort of thing. I don't think that it's ever been mentioned that the drink was spiked. Daisy went to the hospital very quickly after her assault, and a rape kit was performed. I believe in America, as part of a rape kit, a blood test for drugs would be performed as standard, and from what I was able to tell, no drugs were found. It's not mentioned anywhere that I could find that they were drugged, but they were extremely under the influence of alcohol, and bearing in mind they are 13 and 14 years old.
Right, I'm with you. Sorry, that's my bad. When you said they collapsed or they weren't responsive, and that's when they said the bitch cup, I just presumed they knew it was something and they passed out, hence why it was the designated, quote, bitch cup. But the fact they have a designated cup for, quote, bitches to drink out of is highly, highly suspicious to me.
I'm not even halfway through this case, and already the things that these girls have gone through is absolutely awful, which has only been, in my opinion, made worse by Sheriff Darren White, who, in my opinion, totally not worthy of the title of sheriff, and how he got elected twice is beyond me. Mark, what do you think about Sheriff Darren White's comments?
Out of touch, dinosaur-like, and a massive problem why these boys have probably done this before. Maybe not much, but they certainly seem to be pretty well versed in luring girls to this cellar and having a designated quote, bitch cup, unquote. People like him and his attitudes are probably don't help when girls are deciding whether or not to come forward or not.
Absolutely. I went on a bit of a rant on my social media a few days ago, I don't know if you saw it, about an aspect of this case which we will get to later. But see if I ever hear anyone saying, "Why don't victims of rape come forward?" ever again. If anyone doesn't know by now why victims of rape don't come forward and report to the police their story, you've been living in a cave, quite frankly. It's absolutely ridiculous. One thing that Sheriff Darren White said, which is outstanding to me, is that it's up to legislators to figure that out. It's already been figured out. It's state law. And I think it's really quite concerning that the sheriff of a town doesn't know what first degree rape is.
And I'm quite concerned that he, knowing the facts that he knows about the case, is not asking these other alleged, well, maybe we'll get into it, I don't know. He's not concerned that there may be more young ladies that have been lured to this cellar, been made to drink from a certain cup at a certain time, and then videoed being raped while they've been unconscious. I mean, that's a pretty horrific crime, really. That's what he's been focusing on.
And it's very clear, in my opinion, in the Audrey and Daisy documentary, he seems bothered by the accusation. He doesn't seem bothered that it perhaps happened. If you get what I mean. He at one point, I actually forgot to include this in my notes, but he at one point said something to the effect of, these boys are the only people who are actually trying to move on with their lives and to do something decent with their lives. Like, they're moving on from it, why is everyone else not?
Very, very strange. Have these boys got links to the police? Any of their dad's police officers or anything like that?
Yes, shocker.
No way. Seriously, which one of the boys' dad's a police officer?
Well, I'll get into this in a minute, but Matthew's grandfather is not only a former policeman, but he is a state representative.
Wow.
Funny how that was so easily predictable, eh?
It just immediately explains why they're even trying to normalise the lad's behaviour. For once, I'm actually quite shocked that the lads so young have done this. To be honest, and it's insane.
It's really scary that boys that young, I don't want to say have the presence of mind. I mean, they were 17 years old. They know right from wrong. What I say it's surprising, it's not surprising because sadly it happens all the time. But it's shocking that it happens all the time. And again, we'll get into this a little bit later when I talk about what's happened since this case was somewhat resolved. But Daisy's gone on to try to do her best to help rectify that problem. She has been so brave throughout this whole thing. As I said, we'll get into more of her story and what she went on to do a bit later. But to go through all of this, I can't imagine at 14 years old. I can't even begin to imagine. I'm sure Netflix had their reasons for not touching on this, but I'm really disappointed that they didn't. Is that, as I said, the child pornography part of this case was hardly spoken about, and that to me, that's a major part of this case, in my opinion. I don't know how you can just ignore that. Children, even if, I don't care if they're 14, 15, 16, 17, I don't care. If you're circulating a photo of a 14-year-old girl being raped, you're distributing child pornography.
It might have something to do with the legal age being 14, in which case that might be different. I don't know. I've no idea.
I kind of thought that, so I looked it up and it's not. Even in Missouri, where the age of consent is 14, child pornography is still defined as a sexual act with someone under the age of 18.
Right. Oh, okay.
It's the same in the UK. Even though our age of consent is 16, child porn is still classified as content with anyone under the age of 18. I think that's the same in most, at least first world countries. I think that law is fairly standard, that's 18. A 14-year-old girl engaged in sexual intercourse, it's rape.
Videoed rape on unconscious, videoed. I mean,
there's in the documentary, there's a video of part of Matthew's interrogation where he clearly admits that there was a video, it was very short, and he deleted it. Jordan admits to filming it. Now, I understand that if you physically cannot find the video, that's a very hard case to make, but as I said, I don't actually believe that they tried to confiscate anyone else's phone to see if it was on there. I don't think they served any warrants on anyone else's phone. And if that sort of video is circulating at high school, why is that not that department's top priority? After obviously getting Paige and Daisy's rapists off the street, how that is not priority number one is to find that video and get rid of it.
It all totally depends on if they can get subpoenas for the mobile phones.
But if the two boys have admitted that the video exists, someone, I don't know who, someone told Charlie, Daisy's brother, about this video. That's how Charlie came to find out about it. And it wouldn't have been those boys, because obviously Charlie had nothing more to do with them after they, raped his sister. So there's plenty of people who acknowledge this video existed, and even Sheriff White doesn't make any bones about that and pretty much says there are plenty of people who claim this existed, but I don't believe them. If that many people are saying that that video exists, why is absolutely no action being taken to that?
Because, again, if they can't find it, they can't prove it, I suppose. That's the only thing I can think of.
But how would they prove it if they've not got warrants, though? That's the bit I don't understand. They didn't even try to find it.
Might well come down to one of the lads linked to the police. Maybe he's just gone, look, guys, a few guys messing around, girls get drunk, pass out. But that's probably what I don't know. It's unfortunately, I think it all comes back to the links to the police that one of the families have. They were just trying to minimise it as much as possible, I think.
That leads us on to the next part of this case, and just as a warning, prepare to feel more outraged. The charges against Matthew Burnett were dropped due to insufficient evidence and Daisy and her family supposedly not cooperating with the investigation.
I, for one, am shocked.
I know.
That has shocked me to my core.
Didn't see that coming at all, eh?
No.
Sheriff Darren White said, quote, "If you have no victim, you have no crime, and the victims refuse to be victims anymore. Mrs. Coleman likes to tell stories, and it would be nice if she told an accurate story for once," unquote. Melinda and Daisy deny these claims, with Melinda telling CNN, quote, "I told them everything. That's absolutely not true, and it still kind of shocks me that they're lying about it," unquote. She also told the Kansas City Star, quote, "How do you think we don't want to cooperate? We went to get a rape kit done. I wrote a statement and my daughter gave a statement to police," unquote. Also, I really don't understand how there's not enough evidence. They had the rape kit and her blood alcohol level was so high that she was almost comatose. So even if she hadn't passed out at the time of the rape, she wouldn't have been legally able to consent.
So what happened with the rape kit? Whose DNA was in the rape kit?
I'm assuming Matthew's. I don't know, but I'll get onto that in just 2 seconds. It just doesn't make any sense. Until you discover that Matthew Burnett's grandfather Rex is a former police officer and state representative, as I've already said. Paige's mother Robin summed it up very well when she said, quote, "It became more important to shield the boys than it did to find justice for the girls. The one that is the banner for your community, you don't want to see them in trouble. You don't want to think those things about them. They are the heroes of small towns. I guess the wrong boy raped her," unquote. Melinda fully believes that the attacks were premeditated, telling the Daily Mail, quote, "It wasn't a night of drinking that got out of hand. They had the two girls in and out in less than an hour. It was like a covert operation. The girls left the house at 2 a.m. Before the charges against Matthew were dismissed, around 12 or 13 girls came forward to make statements that something similar had happened to them. But one by one they fell away when they saw what was happening to Daisy. They were intimidated, and I can't blame them. It's always the same boys or a variation of that group. They call themselves the Wolf Pack. These boys would come over and watch football in my living room. I'd make chili for them. They used to come over to our house all the time. Charlie regarded Nick as his best friend, and yet they did this and left Daisy in the dirt," unquote. Robert Rice, who was the prosecutor on the case, said that he felt he had absolutely made the right decision and that he could sleep easy at night knowing that dropping the charges was the right thing to do. Melinda and Daisy Coleman were furious about the charges being dropped, and they campaigned to every media outlet that would listen about the injustice that had been done and that a rapist was walking free. It worked, and the case went viral, catching the attention of online hacker group Anonymous, who stated, quote, "We demand an immediate investigation into the handling by local authorities of Daisy's case. Why was a suspect who committed to a crime released with no charges? How is video and medical evidence not enough to put one of these football players inside a courtroom? What is the connection to these prosecutors, if any, to Representative Rex Barnett? Most of all, we are wondering, how do the residents of Maryville sleep at night? Unquote. The case attracted a lot of negative attention to the town, something which Mayor Jim Fall was very unhappy about. He described Maryville as a town that prides itself on their high school, varsity and college football teams winning games, and that Maryville was, quote, classic small town America, unquote. He didn't think that the town deserved all the negative press it was getting, and pointed out that 20 years before Daisy and Paige were raped, the townspeople built a 1,000-acre lake which was integrated into a golf course, and is one of the top 100 places to go fishing in America. What does that have to do with 2 teenage girls being raped? Absolutely fuck all. Yet Jim Fall wonders why that didn't get the same attention as Daisy and Paige's case. This man used to work as a journalist. Let's just take a minute to let that sink in.
There's just a definite attempt to minimalise the crime. It's just so obvious. It's so glaringly obvious that the links to the family have to the police is obviously quite substantial, because they are literally trying to minimalise the lad's actions and involvement.
It's so blatant, it's offensive. There's no other way to put it. And in the documentary where Jim Fall talks about his stupid fucking lake and comparing that to, well, why didn't that get as much attention? Sorry that I'm not pissing my pants over your lake after 2 girls were brutally raped in your town.
At least 2 girls.
At least 2 girls were brutally raped in your town. So I'm sorry I'm not pissing my pants over your lake. Out of touch isn't even the word. Just, there's no other word. He came across really stupid.
You know what a real shocking part of this crime is, I think, that doesn't really get enough, is the fact they dumped her in -5 conditions. They didn't knock on the door and run away and leave her on the... They dumped her like a piece of trash in the snow in -5, fully aware that she could die. You could even argue they could have been done for attempted murder or whatever strand. I'm probably not using the right terminology. Reckless with a life endangerment. I don't know, whatever the hell, however they put it. But that's almost as it's not worse than the rape, because there's not much worse than rape. But dumping someone in -5 snow after raping them like a bag of trash is as bad. It's as bad as it gets, shall we say. That's a fact of the crime that I don't think the police really grasp, to be honest.
Absolutely not. I totally agree. The charge of endangering the welfare of a minor, that's what they got charged with for leaving her in the snow.
Is that it?
That was it. That's why they were charged with that. A charge that very quickly got dropped, but yeah, that's where that charge came from.
How can that get dropped?
Matthew wasn't really a friend of Charlie's, Daisy's brother. Nick, Cole and Jordan were. No one texted him. None of the 3 of them text Charlie to say, yo, your sister's at Matthew's house, or yo, we have your sister, come and get her.
Where's the hospital in all of this? Surely they must know the signs of frostbite. They must know the signs of forcible rape. They must know why the doctors and nurses and people like that not speaking up.
The rape kit concludes that Daisy was raped. The doctors told Melinda outright, your daughter was sexually assaulted. She had frostbite. She was treated for frostbite. I don't know, and I'll get into this in a little bit. I don't know why that evidence wasn't enough. This is pure speculation on my part, and it was only a thought that came into my mind as I was typing this today. But I wonder about how that rape kit was stored when it got into police custody, or if it was, for example, if it maybe accidentally, quote unquote, might have been stored improperly and that's why they couldn't use it. I don't know. That was really skirted over in the documentary as well. Again, pure speculation. I don't know that to be true at all. It was just a thought that came to me. I don't know why the rape kit and her blood alcohol level 8 hours after she stopped drinking wasn't enough to charge him with first-degree rape.
So they've got his DNA, a rape kit, a doctor's opinion that she was forcibly raped. They know she was dumped in the snow in -5 because the doctor said she had frostbite. Why isn't he being charged?
Agreed. It's absolutely baffling. I've got absolutely no idea. And Robert Rice, the prosecutor, he can sleep at night. Well, no one cares if you can sleep at night, pal. People care if the victims can sleep at night, not you. What an insensitive comment. Well, I can go to my bed and I can sleep happily in my bed knowing that I'm safe. Fuck the 2 teenage girls that just got raped by their brother's friends. I can sleep well and I've done my job, so see you later, is the attitude.
Who is... There must be a good guy in this. Please tell me there's someone in this story who's standing up. A defense attorney, a DA, somebody's taking the bulls by the horn and going, no, this ain't good enough. Someone must be.
As we have all seen in recent years, there is nothing like a media shitstorm to stir the DA's office and police departments into action. Charges were refiled against Matthew Burnett, and Special Prosecutor Jean Peters Baker told the documentary that her heart sunk when she was asked to take on the case. Great to know that so many people in authority are passionate about this case, but moving on. She said that she tried to find additional evidence to strengthen the case, but was unsuccessful. When asked about the, quote, state of the case when it was handed to her, unquote, she refused to answer, which in my opinion seems like a very diplomatic way of saying it was shit. She said there was not enough evidence to support a sexual assault charge, despite the rape kit showing clear signs of trauma, so he was convicted of endangering the welfare of a minor and given a 2-year suspended sentence. The term of his sentence meant that in those 2 years he was not allowed to drink alcohol, would have to attend substance misuse counselling and routine drug testing, and was to have no contact with Daisy or her family. He also had to perform 100 hours of community service and pay restitution of $1,800 to provide counselling services to Daisy. A statement was given on behalf of Daisy when he was sentenced, and she said, quote, "Today I am grateful that the defendant took responsibility by pleading guilty to the charges. I am ready to move forward. To all of those who have supported me, I promise that what happened on January 8th, 2012 will not define me forever," unquote. Which I think is very big of her. I'm not entirely sure I am as, well, no, I know I am not as forgiving a person, and if someone did that to me and they were given a 2-year suspended sentence, I wouldn't be responsible for my actions. I'd be going for blood if that was me, and I can only commend her for how gracious she has been and how strong she was while all this was going on. And may I just repeat again, she was 14.
It's a horrible, horrible case, but it stinks of a cover-up. It stinks of a hint of corruption. What are these people? Where are the good guys in this story? Where are the people who are standing up and going, no, this is not good enough? There must, because it just seems like the corruption is running wild in this case.
Apart from the Coleman family and the Pinkhurst family, there's not one person I can single out that are not related to the victims of this case that I can say are the good guys. You know, there's not one single person. I'm not saying there wasn't one, but from my research, there was no one single person stood out to me as being a person in authority and a person in power who said, no, this isn't good enough.
What about a lawyer? Does the family have a lawyer?
I didn't see evidence that they had a lawyer. I'm not saying that they didn't. They might have, but I couldn't find that anywhere.
See, what the police should have done? The police should have obviously interviewed all the suspects separately and just tried to break one of them, offer them deals, offer them if they testified against their friends. It's like a chain. Every chain is a weak link, and one of these lads would have been a weak link. And if they offered them a deal to testify against their friends, this case would have been solved by now. I'm pretty positive of that.
There's a lot of media outlets and journalists who have obviously picked up this case, and they've said this isn't good enough, and it was only because of the media outcry about this case that a second investigation was done. That's why I'm so passionate about giving these cases a platform, because it's often not until things like this happen when people get together and collectively say, no, this isn't how our system's meant to work. We are going to get justice for the victims. It's not until then, a lot of the time, that things start happening. And this case is a classic example of that, even though what ended up happening, in my opinion, is nowhere near a severe enough sentence for what he did. The only reason that happened at all was because of people feeling passionate about this case and about Daisy and about Paige and about what those girls went through.
Let's go right, for people listening. Right, let's go right back to the start. There were two girls lured to a cellar. They were drunk. They passed out. They were raped. They were filmed being raped by a group of lads, one of which has connections to the police force, or dad or uncle or whatever has really, really strong connections to the police force. So it would have been highly embarrassing for his family. And no one has spoken up for them. Sorry, hang on. No, I've missed something out there. They were dumped. One of them was dumped in the snow in -5 conditions. Lucky not to die from frostbite. She had a rape kit done in hospital. The hospital said she was raped. They had a DNA match from the rape kit that was identified from the lad she was with, and still no one's been charged. Is that the long and short of it?
Yeah.
Wow. There we go.
I know. You couldn't. Not that you would want to make this up, but you couldn't.
I just wanted to make sure I had the facts straight. That is just. I mean, of course, myself, and it's scary, scary to think that in this day and age, there's still crimes like this that happen. And it's basically, he's got friends in high places. His family has friends in high places. That's exactly what's going on here.
It's mentioned quite a few times in the documentary that the Barnett name is quite infamous in Maryville, shall we say?
Yeah.
And given that, I mean, when I say infamous, I mean they're quite well known before this happened, it was in a good way. I don't know if that's purely because of the grandfather being a state representative or if there's other powerful people in that family, but it is said multiple times in the documentary that the Barnetts were very well known in Maryville. And Maryville only has a population of 11,000. That's very, very small. It strikes me that it's very possible that this town, they look after their own, and Daisy Coleman and the Coleman family were not their own. They were outsiders who moved into this town. The Barnetts were a very powerful family, a very prominent family. Daisy Coleman made an allegation against Matthew Barnett, and in my opinion, I don't think that she stood a chance of getting justice, and I really wish that hadn't been the case. Nothing outrages me more. Sometimes what's worse than committing a crime is committing it knowing that you're going to get away with it.
Oh, I don't think they did. I don't think they did it necessarily thinking they were going to get away with it because of who their relatives were. I think they probably did it because they've probably done it before and got away with it.
Quite possibly. I think again, pure speculation, I think Matthew Barnett probably knew that he would get away with it. Like you said, it's a bit of both. Partly, he's got his granddad to bail him out, and secondly, why wouldn't he get away with it? Because he had plenty other times.
Just the whole phrase bitch cup. These group of friends have a bitch cup where only I should say quote unquote, only should we say the victim drinks out of that. I want to know when they thought of this, how long has it been happening, who thought of the idea, when did it first become a thing? Because it sounds like a tradition. It sounds like they've got into a routine of calling it that. They don't just suddenly. That is a thing. That sounds like a thing that's been going on for a while to me. I don't know what it says to you, but that to me feels like it's probably full of just solid vodka or something like that. Something to pass out. These young ladies wanted to impress the older guys, neck that out of the so-called bitch cup.
I think that's exactly what happened. They do say in the documentary that that was the drink of choice that night, was vodka. I don't know exactly what was in the bitch cup. I actually feel disgusting even saying that, but I do believe it was. I might be wrong, but from what I saw in the documentary, I was led to believe that it was straight vodka that was in that cup.
Who else has made allegations against these kids?
13 other girls.
Sorry, whoa, hang on. How many?
13.
13 other girls have said they've gone through the same thing.
Allegedly, being very careful about how I say this. So I read in a source, and as always, all my sources will be linked on my website, that up to 13 girls have accused either this group of boys or a variation of boys from that friends group of multiple different things. Because there hasn't ever been an official complaint, what the girls actually accuse the boys of is unclear, but I don't think it takes a rocket scientist to figure it out what these girls have allegedly accused these boys of doing.
So what we've got is potentially, if the allegations are true, is a group of boys that are serially raping, who have an MO, who have a way of doing it, a tried and trusted way of doing
Daisy
it.
said in the documentary that something, I don't know her exact words, but something to the effect of she was really flattered when they invited her over because she thought, oh, that'll make me cool,
Exactly.
and that's a normal teenage thing, to want to. You're so easily swayed when you're a teenager. Like, as someone who's been a teenage girl, you're so easily convinced to do things under the guise of, oh, people will like me and I'll be popular. As I said in the intro, all teenagers want is to fit in.
Popularity, they want to be in with the in crew, they want to be accepted, they want to be cool, they want to be good reputation.
And those boys knew that. They knew that. They took advantage of that.
13. Wow. That is an incredible amount of potential victims. That is, and again, that fits. I didn't know that when I was earlier, when I was saying about the whole, when did this bitch cup start? They've got into a routine, they've got an MO, they've got a victim type, they know the language to use to get them over, to groom them to come over. They've got the facilities to do it. They've got a dungeon or whatever it's called.
A basement.
A what? A basement. Sorry, yeah, that's what they call it over there, isn't it? A basement. This strikes me as a pretty dark situation, to be honest. The least way I could put it. It's a really, you've got 14 or 15 if you include the two victims we're talking about, accusing a group of men of serial rape. That's the bottom line. That's
Because these allegations, these other 13 allegations, were never formally made to the police, I have absolutely no idea anything other than 13 allegations. So I don't know how far they go back. I don't know if some of them were made, if some of these incidents, shall we call them, allegedly happened before or after Daisy's rape. I don't know.
I'll be amazed if it didn't happen after, but when people like this do what they do, they just get they get such a rush and they get such a buzz from doing it that they're very unlikely they'll stop. Very unlikely they'll stop.
Well, these boys are now in their mid-20s. I couldn't find any information on them repeat offending. If they have, it's not been in the media. I've got absolutely no idea what they're doing with their lives now, although according to Sheriff White, they're getting on with their lives. They're the only ones, according to him, that are trying to put this behind them. I bet they are.
That's an appalling statement, that is.
Of course they want to put it behind them. They done it.
That's right up there with the George Floyd mayor saying you can still breathe if you can talk, when he was saying, that is right up there with the most stupid comments I think I've ever heard from and I've heard some crackers, believe me, but this and that you wonder how these people function in high office to say such a stupid thing.
Yeah, and why didn't our lake get as much attention as two teenage girls being raped? That's a doozy. There's a little bit more left to go, so buckle in. The media attention surrounding this case was very mixed, even now in the 21st century. In a clip shown in the Audrey and Daisy documentary, lawyer Joseph Di Benito said, quote, and I'm actually shaking having to read this, so bear with me. What did she expect to happen at 1 a.m. after sneaking out? There are telltale signs of this girl actually lying, unquote. Sheriff Darren White continued to deny a rape occurred, saying, quote, you know, unfortunately, you have a lot of people involved in this that are running around telling a lot of stories, you know, and without pointing fingers, it serves to benefit people's causes by making a lot of things up that really didn't happen and really don't exist. But don't underestimate the need for attention, especially young girls. There is a lot of pressure on young girls in our society to be pretty, to be liked, to be the popular one. All those things, and it's not fair, but it's how our society works, unquote. Adding that, quote, girls have as much culpability in this world as boys do, unquote. When the interviewer challenged this and reminded him that it was the boys in this case who committed the crime, he said, quote, were they, unquote, which is very different from the quote I shared at the start of this episode where he acknowledged that the boys broke the law and that they should be punished. Many of the residents of Maryville were not supportive of the Colemans, and after the Colemans' house burnt down mysteriously, they moved back to Albany. As if their house burning down wasn't bad enough, high school students in the area wore t-shirts that said, Matty won, Daisy nil. Daisy was very open and honest about her mental health struggles since her rape, saying, quote, I was very young when it happened, so obviously I didn't cope with it well. I was very negative towards myself. I lost all my confidence. I didn't realise who I was anymore because I lost my position on the cheerleading squad. I faced a lot of identity problems, and a lot of that journey was just redefining myself and recognising that even though all those people were saying these things about me doesn't mean they're true, because I get to define who I am. I feel no resentment towards my attacker, only because I have come to realise he was only passing on some form of negativity to me, which at some point was passed on to him. So once I came to that realisation, that made me forgive him, in a sense, even though he never presented an apology. Unquote. May I say again how gracious and brave and incredibly strong this girl is. I can't even. This case would be heartbreaking no matter how the victim reacted to it, because she has got absolutely every right to hate him, to hate the police, to hate the prosecutors, to hate that skanky town.
Eat her alive, though. What she's doing is exactly right. If she was bitter and angry, it would destroy her life. It would destroy her life.
And I agree with you, but out of everybody on this planet, she has got the right to be angry. She has got the right to be so angry, and she's been so honest about all the mental health issues that she's faced, which again we'll get on to in a minute. She's so, even in the documentary, she's so well spoken. She knows how to put a point across so eloquently. For someone who, I don't know how old she was when the documentary was filmed. I'm not entirely sure when it came out on Netflix. I believe around 2016. So she was still definitely a teenager when that documentary was released and when it was filmed. But for someone of her age to be as brave and strong as she was, I have no words for how amazing I think Daisy Coleman is.
I completely agree. I think I would liken, to a certain extent, and I know a load of people who I talk to will go on about that again, but it's like the families of the Hillsborough disaster. She's dealing with it the same way they did, with class and dignity, and yeah, I'm sure they're furious and angry, but it would just eat them alive. The hatred and the anger would ruin their life, and I think she will suffer that at some point in her life. But at the moment, I think she's doing exactly the right thing. I really do.
Daisy went on to really suffer from, well, her and Paige, both went on to suffer from PTSD. Paige actually went on to suffer from conversion disorder, which I'd never heard of before this case, but it's a condition where she suffers panic attacks so severe to the point where she passes out. Daisy self-harmed, would carve boys' names into her skin, brand herself, and would self-harm in many other ways. Daisy described her journey with mental health saying, quote, "I just felt like if I'm this ugly on the inside, I might as well look it on the outside. You're the S word, you're the W word, B word. Just after a while, you start to believe it." Unquote. Paige and Daisy's life went in totally different directions, although Paige and Daisy have always been very supportive of each other and their journeys. Paige became a mother at the age of 18. Daisy graduated high school and received an athletic scholarship from Missouri Valley College, where she studied art and went on to become a tattoo artist. Daisy went on to co-found Safe Bay, an organisation that seeks to educate students on sexual violence. Speaking about Safe Bay, she said, quote, "After my case went viral, I took a break for a while, but during that time period, I noticed a lot of other victims and survivors had come forward. Seeing me doing it so publicly, I felt that it gave them a space to tell their own story, and I was very inspired by that. So after meeting with 3 other women from PAVE, which is Promoting Awareness Victim Empowerment, who were about the same age as I and had their own stories of assault, we decided to found our own organisation called Safe Bay, and we tour high schools and colleges in the US, and if we ever get the funds, we will go outside the US." Unquote. While Daisy went on to do some amazing things in her life, sadly, tragedy struck her family again. Her brother Tristan died on the 16th of June 2018 in a car accident with his mother Melinda in the car. Melinda and Tristan were helping Daisy move to Colorado, and on their way back they got into a one-vehicle crash on Interstate 70 in West Kansas. Despite efforts to save him, he died at the scene just 19 years old. Melinda was injured in the crash, but she survived. Daisy wrote about her brother's death on Instagram, saying, quote, "I would sell my soul to be on the couch with you again, watching cops or listening to peepers. You fought so hard for so long. I don't understand why the universe decided today was the day to let you go, but I will never stop loving you. You'll never stop being my best friend. My baby brother, you'll always be." Unquote. I wish I could say that that's where the tragedy in this case stops, but it's not. Daisy Coleman completed suicide on the 4th of August 2020 after 4 unsuccessful attempts in the past. After Melinda phoned the police to do a welfare check on her, they found her dead inside her home, aged just 23 years old.
It's tragic, absolutely tragic.
Well, we are recording this on the 8th of August, and Daisy died on the 4th. I said to Mark before we started recording that I usually wouldn't discuss cases that are this raw and this fresh. The reason I felt really passionate about talking about Daisy Coleman's case is that she, despite everything that that girl went through, she achieved so much, and her case is an example of everything that is wrong in the system, not just in America, but all over the world. Both Mark and I live in the UK, and I think we can agree that our system is way, way less than perfect. There are so many flaws in the judicial system all across the world, and if there was ever a case that highlighted every single one of them, it's this case. And I think Daisy's right. Her attack, her rape, doesn't define who she is. She defined who she was.
It doesn't define who she is. It defines the culture that she was the victim of. It defines
who her attackers were. That's who it defines.
exactly, and the corruption in the police. It defines the investigators. It defines the DA. It defines that sheriff in brackets. It defines the attackers. In no way, shape, or form. How she was as a survivor defined her because she was so heroic, but it doesn't define her as a so-called victim.
No, it doesn't. define her. It will never define her. But her case needs to be told, because Daisy's case is an extreme in the sense of so many things contributed to her rapist never really seeing justice for what he did to her. But this sort of thing goes on all the time. We can bury our heads in the sand and pretend that it doesn't, and pretend that times now are better than they were 50, 60 years ago, but they're not. In some ways, they've improved, but that's it. They've improved. What really, really annoys me, well, not annoys me is too light a word. What angers me, enrages me, about when rape victims come forward and tell their story, how people, not everyone, but a lot of people, automatically go, well, do you believe her? That happens all the time, that rape victims, they're not believed on the face of their testimony. They're not believed. No one asks someone whose car got stolen if they asked for it. No one asks any other victim of any other crime what they were wearing, how drunk they were. No one. That happens with absolutely no other crime. And it infuriates me. And if one more person, as I said earlier, I went on a rant on this on my Twitter a few days ago. If one more person says to me, why do rape victims not come forward? I don't really know what to say to people like that. I don't think there's anything to say to people like that, because if you still have that opinion now, you need far more educating than I am personally able to give you.
I'll give an example of why you're absolutely right. Is one word, and that is a backlog. The backlog of untested rape kits in America. They think the actual number is over 500,000 when you take into consideration the ones that have been destroyed. I don't think we've got, hopefully, anything like that. We are a lot better with rape in this country, as in testing the rape kits. I don't think there is so much. I know there is a backlog, but not so much of a backlog over here. But what you're saying is absolutely spot on. Women just don't get taken seriously, hence why there is a backlog in the first place.
People go on in the media about women lying about being raped, and while I'm not going to deny that that has happened, I'm not saying that no woman has ever lied about that ever. It is such a small percentage. It's unreal. Like, more people have lied about insurance fraud than have lied about being sexually assaulted. Yet if someone's house gets burgled, or if a business mysteriously burns down, that's not the first thing on everyone's mind, is it? I would imagine. I don't know the statistics off the top of my head. However, it just, oh my god, it enrages me. It enrages me so much. I can't even begin to describe how much that enrages me. And for anybody who doubts survivors' stories because the media likes to spin the narrative that women lie about rape because the boy didn't call her the next day, I say this to you. For every one woman who comes forward about being sexually assaulted, there are at least 20 who have been and have never told a soul. I don't like those odds. So if a woman comes to me, and they have done, and told me that they have been assaulted, I believe them. You need to believe them, because if anyone discloses that to you, there's a good chance you are the first person that they have ever told. And if your reaction is, well, why did you do this? Or why, if you ask any question that starts with why, implying that they are somewhat to blame, there is a good chance they will never, ever open up to you again about what they've been through. I don't want to say what the right thing to say is. I'm not by any means an expert, but you need to believe them, you need to support them, and you need to be there for them. I was devastated when I found out that Daisy completed suicide, and I hope that she's found peace. I hope that she's been reunited with her brother and with her dad. And I hope someone somewhere with some power and influence learns from this, learns from Daisy's case. And I'm not even going to sit here and say so it doesn't happen again, because I know it will. I'm devastated that it will, but it will. But I hope that someone somewhere hears about this case and all the other cases of sexual violence and does something about it. I know I am a very, very tiny, tiny fish in a huge ocean. However, this is, if you couldn't tell by now, this is a topic I feel really, really strongly about. So in the next few weeks, I don't know when exactly, I'll keep you posted on my social media, I'm going to be doing a full week of episodes, just like I did with the Racism Killed series, where I'm going to call it the Survivor series, where I discuss a case of sexual violence every day from Monday to Friday. And
Wow.
I know that it's not the type of case that a lot of true crime podcasts cover. They usually cover murder, unsolved mysteries, disappearances, Jane and John Does, which my podcast also mainly focuses on. However, this stuff is equally important, and it deserves a voice.
Mm-hmm.
So
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more.
that will be coming up on the channel very, very soon. Hello, so this is editor Stephanie here. I've just listened to the episode back and I realised that when I was talking about believing victims of sexual assault, I said women. And I am very, very aware, painfully aware, that this issue not only affects men, but it affects people who are gender fluid, non-binary, however you identify. This is a issue that affects any and all genders. So I don't want anyone listening to this to think that I was meaning only believe women, or that women are the only people that this happened to, because I'm very, very aware that it's not. I'm sorry if anybody took offence to that, but that's absolutely not what I meant. We'll get back to the episode now. Thank you for joining me today, Mark.
No, I thank you. It's my first guest appearance on any podcast, and it's been a pretty emotional one. The passion in your voice is pretty moving. Actually, I'm just sitting here listening to your expert opinion, and it's highly motivating to me just to hear your passion on the subject. To be honest with you, I'm sorry I haven't spoken much, but I've just been taken in by your passion, and your determination's been amazing.
Thank you. I'm by no means an expert on the case, but sadly, I've got far more experience in this topic than I dare to talk about on this episode. But so it is something that I feel really, really passionate about. And again, all of Mark's social media will be linked in the description. I'll be over on his show in the next week or so.
Yeah, we better talk about that. If there is a Manchester pusher or not, and if there was, is there a link to this? I haven't got his name to hand. I don't know. Fuck it, we're not going to name him. He doesn't deserve to be named. This the most prolific serial rapist in UK history was operating at the same time as a lot of these so-called pusher incidents. Is it a coincidence? That's what we'll be discussing. All photos and sources related to today's case can be found on my website, uncovertruecrimepodcast.co.uk. That's all I have for you today. Thank you for listening to the very end. Please stay safe and have a good night.
Where'd you go?